In 2012, LSAC approved 46% of accommodation requests on the LSAT. 10 years later, it was 98%. And so if you score on a 175 on the LSAT today, it doesn't mean what it used to mean. And neither does a 170, a 165, or a 160. The whole scoring system on the LSAT has quietly become something else over the last decade, and most applicants have no idea the game has changed. I went from a 152 to a 175 myself, and I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005. Today, I'm going to show you 3 reasons your score and your application aren't measuring what you think they're measuring and what I would fix to change the system. The first big thing is LSAT accommodations. In May 2014, LSAC settled a class action lawsuit brought by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing. And that settlement is the reason for the 46% to 98% approval jump. Here's how it works. The settlement was a consent decree, and it required 3 big things. 1, LSAC paid over $7 million in penalties and damages. Second thing, they had to permanently stop flagging accommodated scores, meaning law schools can no longer tell whether a score was earned under standard conditions or with extra time. Third big thing, they had to automatically approve accommodations for anyone who had received them on a prior standardized test like the SAT. And that last one changed everything, because if you got 50% extra time on the SAT in high school, LSAC has to give it to you on the LSAT, and you don't have to reprove the underlying disability. You just got to provide proof that the prior test granted the accommodation. Then in 2018, a federal judge held LSAC in contempt of the original decree. The court found that LSAC had been using what was internally called 50% emails to push applicants into accepting partial accommodations. The contempt finding extended the decree another 2 years. So the combined effect meant that granted extra time requests went from roughly 6,000 in the 2018 to 2019 testing year to roughly 15,000 in the 2022 to 2023 testing year. Over that same window, ADHD diagnoses accounted for about 37% of all accommodation requests, which was the single largest category. But this problem is not limited to the LSAT, it's happening across all of higher ed. A couple months ago, The Atlantic magazine published a piece that broke a stunning number. 38% of Stanford undergraduates are now registered with a disability, and 24% are actively receiving academic or housing accommodations. For context, in 2011 to 2012, the national rate of undergraduates with a disability was about 11%. Brown and Harvard are now at around 20%, Amherst is at 34%, Stanford leading the pack at 38%. Now bring that pipeline back to the LSAT. At UC Irvine Law, the in-school accommodation rate was already 25.5% as of 2021. Pepperdine students have reported that the administration confirmed at a town hall that more than a third of their law students have accommodations, and that rate is comparable to peer schools. And so here's the kicker. LSAC's own research, published in a 2017 technical report, found that scores earned with time accommodations overpredict 1L performance. And I'll be straight with you here, I was writing about this on my old LSAT blog back in 2010, citing an even earlier version of the same LSAC finding. So this is not something new, it's just gotten worse. So bottom line, the LSAT score doesn't mean the same thing for everybody, and LSAC has known this for over a decade. Take 2 people who both got a 170, one sat for 2.5 hours under pressure, the other sat for 6 hours with double time plus breaks. They've got the same number on their report, but they're taking a fundamentally different test, and law schools can't tell which is which. Now, I know some people are going to be commenting that accommodations exist for a reason, that we shouldn't penalize people with disabilities, and I agree. I'm not saying we should do that. We shouldn't penalize anybody. So the genuinely correct fix would be to tighten accommodations and audit documentation, only give them to people who actually need them. But that's not going to happen. LSAC is not going to take on the legal risk of denying accommodations because every denial is a potential lawsuit and they've already lost the big one. And so I've got a radical idea. Let me know what you think. What if we just gave everybody double time and unlimited breaks, leading to the same conditions for every single test taker? That means nobody's losing access, nobody's got to prove anything. Everybody's score means the same thing again. And of course, this is not perfect. I mean this somewhat in jest, because you would lose something here, right? I mean, reading under pressure is part of lawyering, and the timed LSAT measures that, but you can't have it both ways. Either time pressure matters and applies to everybody, or it doesn't, and we should stop pretending the scores mean what they used to mean. Second thing, I think that the law school admissions process is somewhat broken right now because the personal statement isn't measuring you anymore. The personal statement is dead due to AI writing them. Adcoms know it, so do applicants. And consultants charging multiple thousands of dollars to polish them are praying that nobody catches on. You can't really tell anymore whether a personal statement was written by the applicant, by a consultant, or by an AI, and in some cases by all three. Meanwhile, the LSAT already has a writing sample. They make you do it. Nobody scores it, and most adcoms don't even read it. It's a leftover from before the digital era. But imagine a scenario where the applicant gets a new writing prompt they've never seen before. They've never seen anything like it before. It could be a short legal scenario or a policy question. They've got 1 hour proctored with no access to AI, and they've got to write a response. Then you've got 2 graders scoring it on a rubric, the way AP exams are graded. The rubric tests 3 things. 1, can you construct a written argument with a thesis and supporting reasoning? 2nd, can you anticipate and respond to a counter argument? And 3rd, what are your basic writing mechanics under pressure? The 2 graders each score the writing. Their scores get averaged. If they're more than 1 point apart, a 3rd grader breaks the tie. The College Board already does this exact model for millions of AP exams every single year. And so could LSAC do it for 150,000 people taking the LSAT each year? They should be able to. It's the same model. And what this would do is it would give you a direct check on the personal statement. If your polished essay reads like a Pulitzer winner and your proctored 1 hour sample reads like you're 10 years old, you've got your answer. You also get an actual writing assessment, which happens to be the single most predictive skill for 1L success, and the current system doesn't test for that at all. And you could object that 1 hour doesn't really capture why somebody wants to be a lawyer, but neither does a personal statement written by an AI or by a consultant. And law schools aren't grading you for why you want to be a lawyer. They're grading you on how well you can write under pressure, and so a scored writing sample tests the actual job. And of course, LSAC is planning to score the writing sample sometime in the next year. We don't really know what that's going to look like, though. Now, the third big thing is grade inflation. There's a big problem with grade inflation in law school admissions right now. The GPA on your transcript doesn't really measure you anymore. 10 years ago, only 2 law schools had GPA medians of 3.9 or above, just Yale and Chicago. But as of last fall, there were 27 law schools with GPA medians of 3.9 or above. So they went from 2 law schools to 27 law schools at that threshold. Yale's 25th percentile GPA is now a 3.90. Texas A&M's GPA median is a perfect 4.0. And the reason, of course, is not that people got smarter, it's grade inflation. And there is a century of data on it. According to one researcher, the average college GPA has been climbing at roughly 0.1 points per decade since the 1960s. In the 1950s, the average college GPA was around a 2.52, but by 2012, 42% of all college grades nationally were A's. By 2020, more than half of students were getting above a B+. The median college graduate now has a GPA above a 3.25. And of course, it's wildly uneven. Private schools inflate grades faster than public schools. Humanities grades easier than STEM fields. Education classes hand out A's about 70% of the time, but chemistry and math, of course, hand them out far less. So a 3.7 in chemical engineering at a tough grader is genuinely a stronger academic record than a 3.95 in a soft major at a heavy inflating school. But the rankings, of course, don't care. US News looks at median GPA. The schools chase that median, and applicants get taught to chase it too. Now, LSAC publishes an adjusted GPA alongside the raw GPA The adjustment uses the publicly available data on the average GPA at the applicant's undergraduate institution and within their major. And so a 3.7 from a school where the average is at 2.8 becomes something close to a 3.95 adjusted. A 3.95 from a school where the average is a 3.7 becomes closer to a 3.7 adjusted, and this data is public. LSAC already calculates LSAT percentiles this way for every single test taker. They've got the infrastructure already. Now, you could object that you can't just throw out GPAs, and I'm not saying to do that. I'm saying use the GPA correctly, because right now, schools are pretending a 3.95 from anywhere means the same thing, which is the opposite of using it correctly. And of course, LSAC could publish adjusted GPAs tomorrow if they wanted to, but they won't, because nobody in the system actually benefits from making it more accurate. Grade inflated schools like the status quo, and US News depends on that. The only people losing here are the applicants getting screened out over a tiny GPA gap that wouldn't exist if the data were adjusted. And so here's where we land on this. I mean, a 175 LSAT used to mean you outperformed almost everybody under the same conditions. Now it means you outperformed almost everybody under conditions that might not be the same as the person sitting next to you. A 3.95 GPA used to mean you were in the top 5% of your class. Now it might mean you went to a school where the top half gets above a 3.95. A polished personal statement used to mean you could write well. Now it might mean your consultant writes well or your AI writes well. None of the numbers in your file mean what they used to mean, but the system is still pretending they do, and unfortunately, a lot of applicants are paying the price here. And so the LSAT, this whole system really, is not whether you can get into law school. It's about whether you can game the system that decides you get in, and the right answer is yes, you can if you have the money, the connection to the right zip code, the right know-how. It's a test of whether you can game the system if you know how the game is played. And so I want to try and help even the playing field for those who are not aware of all this. If you're looking for help with your LSAT prep navigating all of this, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring with me personally is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link to book it is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. You can grab that free LSAT cheat sheet at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. The link again is below the video, in the chat, in my bio as well. Again, open offer for everyone watching this now or later. I'm happy to address any questions on anything at all. LSAT and law school admissions. Feel free to drop your questions here in the chat. I'll get to as many of those as I can. Feel free to keep them coming. Sean Angel's asking, I scored a 170 on the LSAT. What should I do now? And so if you got a 170 on the LSAT, congratulations, that's awesome. If you got it on an official LSAT, then you might be done with the LSAT. The question really, though, is what LSAT score do you need for the outcomes that you're looking to achieve? What are your goals for law school admissions? Will a 170 get you into the law schools that you're targeting? Will it get you scholarship money at the law schools that you're targeting? If you want to go to a top 14 law school, a 170 might not be enough. If you're looking to go to a tier 3 or tier 4 law school, it might get you in with significant scholarships, maybe a full ride. The GPA is also an important piece of the puzzle as well. And so if you let me know what are your goals, I can talk you through what your appropriate next steps might be. But the answer is, annoyingly, I know, it depends. Depends on your goals, depends on your GPA. Reshma Code is asking, does early decision help splitters? I mean, early decision helps everybody in terms of getting in. The problem with early decision, though, is that it can kill any scholarship negotiation leverage that you have, because what binding early decision means is that you are committing to going to a certain law school if you are accepted. But that is independent of the scholarship money they're offering you. So you're saying, if you accept me, I will choose your school. And if you're committing blindly without knowing what the terms of the offer are, then they have no reason to incentivize you to choose their school, because you've already committed to going there regardless of the offer they give you. And so why should they give you money if you're already saying you're going to go no matter what? So for that reason, I always recommend against applying binding early decision, because that kills your scholarship negotiation leverage. If you want to apply early in the cycle, that's a different deal. Law school admissions is already conducted on a rolling basis, meaning that law schools can evaluate applications in the order in which they receive them. And so, yeah, apply early, but not binding. Leon is asking, which schools give several full rides and scholarships? I mean, pretty much nearly every law school will give significant scholarship money, maybe even a full ride. The question is, what numbers do you need to achieve those kinds of outcomes? Nearly every single law school gives significant scholarship money and full rides, but whether they will give it to you depends on the strength of your numbers. And so how strong is your LSAT score and how strong is your GPA relative to the medians of the law schools that you're targeting? If you are applying with an LSAT and a GPA significantly above the medians, ideally above the 75th percentile, then the law schools have reason to give you a full ride. They have reason to at least give you a lot of scholarship money because that helps them raise their standing in the US News rankings, which they care a great deal about because, of course, that determines the prestige of the school to help them attract more applicants in the future and also help them get donations from alumni. And so what you want to do is you want to look at what are the law schools you want to attend. Can you apply with an LSAT and GPA ideally above their published 75th percentile? If so, you've got a decent shot at getting a full ride or at least significant scholarship money. If you're below the medians, you might not get anything. If you're at the medians, you might get in. So, but to answer your question directly, almost every law school will do that with rare exceptions, depending on the strength of your numbers. I see Rathstink is saying, I've got a 2.8 GPA. What do I need on my LSAT? You want the highest LSAT score possible to offset a relatively lower GPA. You're going to be a so-called splitter applicant, which is okay. Law schools love splitters, and they weigh your LSAT score more heavily than your undergraduate GPA anyway. And so in terms of the exact LSAT score you need to get, it's going to vary based on the law school that you're targeting. There are approximately 200 ABA, American Bar Association, accredited law schools in the US, and they run the gamut from low numbers to high numbers in terms of their medians. And so it's all going to depend on the particular schools that you're targeting. I see Eli Majocha is saying 3.5 GPA, young elected official, grassroots fundraiser raising $30,000, interned for 2 judges, got recommendations, 170 LSAT. Are my chances of a full ride good? Not wanting to pay much. So I'll shorten that to 3.5 GPA, 170 LSAT, pretty great softs, it sounds like. So full ride, you can get a full ride somewhere. Again, there are a lot of law schools that all have different requirements. And so the question becomes, where can you get a full ride? I would go on the LSAC website, the LSAC official guide. You can put in your LSAT score and your GPA and see your chances at various schools. And the schools where you are most likely to get in are the schools also most likely to give you a full ride. You can also look at the website lsd.law, where students and applicants put in their numbers to see what outcomes others have gotten, so you can get a sense of where you're going to be competitive for getting that full ride. I see Eugene saying, what is the remedy for a really low undergrad GPA, like below 2.5? The remedy is the LSAT. That's the way to offset the lower GPA. And your GPA is, of course, quite low if that is, in fact, your GPA. And so you might want to write an addendum just explaining the circumstances that led to the low GPA. In other words, what caused the GPA to be lower than it otherwise would have been. Was there a medical issue, a family issue, difficulty adjusting in college, one particular grade or two pulling you down? You want to quickly, succinctly, concisely explain that situation. Don't make excuses, just explain matter of fact. Talk through what happened and why, and of course, give them reason to be confident that it won't happen again, to give some context there. And then, of course, on the other end, you just get a higher LSAT score to offset it. Now, a grad school GPA will not offset that because for law school admissions purposes, grad school GPAs are not factored into the calculations. A grad school GPA functions like a soft factor, essentially. It is not input into the formulas when determining your chances. It's not part of your LSAC calculated GPA. It's not part of what goes to US News or the American Bar Association. And so they'll see it for context, but it's not going to matter in the same way. So for the pure calculations, it's undergraduate GPA and LSAT score specifically. So you've got to get a higher LSAT score to offset the lower GPA. Now for international students, like I see Sandy Macron's asking, international students with a 392 GPA, what do you recommend? And so the weird thing about international student admissions is that LSAC does not interpret or calculate transcripts or GPAs in the same way. They'll say if it's above average, at average, or below average, but that's it, like high, medium, low, but nothing concrete in terms of making calculations. And so if you are an international student, you earned your degree outside the US, they're not going to interpret your transcript in the same way because they just don't know how, which is ridiculous in my view. They should figure out a way to do it beyond just above average, average, or below average, but it is what it is. And so your GPA is like a wash, which means meaning they don't calculate it, it's not factored in, so your LSAT score becomes that much more important as the single metric they are using to evaluate you. A 392 GPA, of course, is great, but it would count if it were in the US. If it's earned outside the US, it's not counted the same way. We just got to get you a higher LSAT score to boost your odds up. Eugene says, the only thing that makes the LSAT hard is figuring out logical reasoning under a time constraint. The content on the exam isn't difficult. Being a lawyer is all about issue spotting. I mean, issue spotting is a major part of being a lawyer. Yes, I agree. As for whether the content on the exam is difficult, I mean, for some people it is. For some people, timing's the big issue. For some people, accuracy is a big issue as well. And so part of what we do when coaching students is we help you learn the tricks and traps of the LSAT. We help you spot the flaws, the issues, the issues at play. There are a lot of different concepts on the LSAT that folks do have trouble absorbing and understanding. And so we break it down section by section, bit by bit, argument by argument, question type by question type. On the LSAT, for example, you've got 15 different types of questions in logical reasoning, including strengthen, weaken, flaw, parallel, resolve, and so on. There's also reading comp to work on, and there are some folks where if they had triple time, they would get great, much higher scores. For others, they have trouble even with unlimited time, and so we like to personalize every program for the individual student. In other words, we meet you where you're at to get you from your starting point up to your goal score over your time frame. And so if you're taking the LSAT in August, for example, you've got only about 2.5 months. We'll take a more intensive boot camp style approach. If you're taking the LSAT in November or January or February, we'll take a more slow and steady approach. Of course, we schedule your prep around your other obligations, whether it's work or school or family. We give you a personalized coaching program with private one-on-one support. We create for you a custom study plan. You get live small group sessions in the evenings. You get an on-demand course as well. And in terms of pricing and details, we could talk through that on a personal call. We like to customize every program for the student. This is not a one-size-fits-all service where we just give you a bunch of videos and say, go figure it out. This is live support. And so we want to make sure that you're getting adequate support for you to meet and reach your goals. And so if anybody wants to talk through what that program could look like, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. Links below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. It's a quick reference on every section and every question type. You can grab that at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet as well. And so we do have programs for those taking the LSAT in August. If you're taking the LSAT in roughly 2.5 months or so, we'd probably want you to get private coaching every single week just to have that consistent support since you've got a relatively shorter time frame. And we could talk through what that program would look like on a call. I see Aiden's asking, my backslide on an LSAT after studying. I backslid on the LSAT after studying, but have pushed it back due to technical difficulties. How do I treat test day to be most similar to practice? Any good mental advice? Okay, so part of doing well on the LSAT is properly simulating test day conditions because it's not enough to get the questions right when you're drilling them in isolation. You can't do 4 individual sections, add them up, and call that a full exam, right? Because pacing and time management and endurance all matter a great deal as well. And so In the coaching, we create for you a study plan broken up into three major phases. You've got accuracy, pacing, and endurance. Accuracy is drilling questions by type to better understand the proper perspective from which to view each section and each question type. Then you've got pacing, doing individual timed sections, working on how you're allocating time over the course of the section. And then finally, you've got endurance, doing full-length timed practice tests. Ideally, if you're taking the LSAT in August, you're going to pretty soon want to transition into doing at least one full timed exam per week, maybe two timed exams a week if you've got more time in your schedule, because test day stress is real. And you want to raise your baseline as well so that even if you've got a bad proctor or a tech issue or nerves and anxiety are coming into play there, we want you hitting your goal score on your worst day and hopefully doing a few points better, assuming that everything goes smoothly. So in other words, all this to say that we've got to simulate test day conditions so that test day itself feels like another run through. You've done it so many times that you're essentially on autopilot and you are solving the questions accurately within the limits of the LSAT, considering the time constraints. And also, by the way, you want to be familiar with the format of the exam as well. If you're taking the LSAT out of books, you should know the LSAT is no longer on paper, it's on the computer. If you're taking it on some unofficial third-party platform or doing it on your phone, you want to know that test day is on the computer. You want to be familiar with the software. I would always recommend using LSAC's Law Hub platform. That is the official test day software. They have made available to you approximately 60 numbered exams in the official LSAT format with 4 sections. And when you're doing your practice test, you want to do them there. You also want to know that it's not to do 4 separate sections individually on 4 consecutive days and then add them up and call it a full exam, because the endurance factor does matter as well. So you want to make sure you're practicing with that in mind. By the way, folks, for those of you just joining now, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. If you find these helpful, please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives, and the algorithm doesn't really boost them because they can't run ads during them. And so I do appreciate your spreading the word, sharing this to your socials on TikTok, sharing this on any group chats you're part of, Facebook groups, Discords, subreddits. The more this grows, the more I'll expand it over time and expand these to do more and more of them, do longer ones as well, maybe bring in some more of a class format as well if you all find that helpful. Just scanning through for anything I may have missed here. The chat moves fast sometimes, so I apologize if I didn't get to anybody's questions yet. Ankara is asking, hi Steve, what are your thoughts on the reduction of number of junior associates gaining employment given the use of AI? So my first thought is that AI there's a lot of fear mongering around this, and even the AI companies I think benefit from some of that because it's like our product's so good that it's causing problems. The way I look at it is that AI can help make folks more efficient and get more done. And so there's always a place for people who are able to leverage technology to increase their efficiency and accomplish more in the same number of hours. And so the law firms, I think, if you look at the big cases that around layoffs around AI, like Baker McKenzie, they were actually laying off support staff, not attorneys. Just like the rise of email and voicemail reduced the needs for secretarial staff, because if voicemail can do what a secretary was doing or email can do it, then they don't need the same number of secretaries. I think that the associates who can leverage AI will, if anything, become more valuable because they can take on more cases, get more work done, and apply their legal reasoning to what AI is giving them, but they don't need all the same support staff in terms of collating papers, for example, or doing doc review, for example. I think there's less need for attorneys doing doc review, but more need for higher level work, pulling together the analysis that AI gives them. And so if you can leverage AI well, if you're familiar with using these tools, I think there's always going to be a place for you. Tayo's asking, where do I take my first diagnostic? I recommend taking your diagnostic test on the LSAC Law Hub website. They give you access to 4 practice tests for free in the official LSAT format, 4 practice exams, each of them containing 4 LSAT sections. So you've got approximately 400 LSAT questions to play with, 4 separate individual practice tests in the official LSAT format. I would take them under timed conditions using exam mode in LawHub. You're doing 2 sections back to back. You get a 10-minute break. Then you do 2 more sections back to back, and that's your test. If you want to get an accurate baseline for what your current abilities are, I would do them under the strict timed conditions. But don't over-index on the results. Don't get discouraged by the result if it's not what you were looking for. You can improve significantly from your starting point. When you take a cold diagnostic, it just tells you that you have not yet learned the language of the LSAT, but of course you can over time. So use it as a benchmark from which to measure your later future progress, and know that you can improve significantly between now and whenever you're taking the LSAT. If you're 20, 30 points off, of course I wouldn't take the LSAT tomorrow. I'd give it at least a couple months, maybe more, to achieve your fullest potential. The LSAT is offered 8 times a year. Coming up later this calendar year, we've got the June LSAT in a couple of weeks. I wouldn't rush it for that, of course. You've also got beyond that August, September, October, November. You could take any of those LSATs. You could even take all of them and still apply to law school this cycle. For those who've been studying for a while, I'd say go for the June LSAT as your first take if you're already signed up for it. Go for the August LSAT as a backup. If you take the LSAT in August, scores come back at the end of August, and you can then apply to law school the second applications open in September. Not a bad move. But if you're not ready by August, again, don't rush it. September, October, November, those LSATs are not yet too late either. You could take any of those, and you'll still be totally fine to apply to law school this cycle. And of course, if you're looking for help putting together a personal study plan, getting some guidance and support on your LSAT prep journey, I'm happy to help you out. I've put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. That cheat sheet's available at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet, below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I'm also offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. Links below the video, pinned in the chat, in my bio as well. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. I'll see you all then. In the meantime, all the best, and take care. Thanks for joining.